in the room. You do those?
I did not, no.
An audio test from the platform.
All right, Sean, you can bring that up a bit more, man, for the hearing room, if you don't mind.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Zoom audio 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Yep, sounds good. I'm getting I got a bit of an echo from you guys at first. Is that from your guys' end, or is that something over here?
Yeah, Daniel, I'm actually in the hearing room with my laptop. It's causing the echo. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, all good, all good. Thank you.
Yeah. So check. All right, Sean, let's hold there, man. Hey, Daniel, if you want to talk to us, we'll hear a clean audio test. That'd be good.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yes, sir. That sounds much better. Thank you. Sound good in the room.
Great, thank you. Thanks for helping out this morning.
No worries. That's what we're here for. Witness mic check.
Can we do a 10 count on that mic again real quick?
Sure thing. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Sean, sorry, I just saw your message. Can you hear me?
Test, test.
Yep. Thanks, Haley.
Are the platform hosts ready to begin?
Yes.
Chairman Levin, are you ready to begin the hearing? Please provide a 5-second countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning. I call this hearing to order. It is so nice to be back in this room with you all. I request unanimous consent that the chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Today, our subcommittee is meeting both in person, good to be with you in person, and remotely for the first time in several months. I want to be clear about what makes this format possible. First, the wide availability of vaccines throughout the United States, and specifically to the members and the staff of this committee. Second, the regular and continued adherence to the recommended health and safety protocols. This pandemic is by no means over, but we have reached a point where we can safely engage in person if certain practices are followed. This information previously was provided to members and staff, but I want to reiterate what the committee will require in order for members and staff to participate in this hearing in person. 1, if you are unvaccinated or your vaccination status is undetermined, you must wear a mask at all times. 2, if you are unvaccinated or your vaccination status is undetermined, you must maintain physical distance within the hearing room. 3, if you are feeling unwell, you should participate in the hearing remotely. I think that ought to be the rule all the time. And 4, members are permitted to be accompanied by 1 staff member while they are present in the hearing room. During the covered period declared by the Speaker pursuant to House Resolution 8, remote participation in hearings will continue to be an option for members. Additionally, after today's proceedings, we will assess whether continuing to meet in person is advisable and feasible. For those members participating remotely, if you're experiencing connectivity issues, please make sure you or your staff contact our designated technical support so those issues can be resolved immediately. Members participating remotely must continue to remain visible on camera for the duration of their participation in the hearing unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render the member unable to fully participate on camera. It is committee policy that members participating remotely will remain muted when not recognized, and for those in the hearing room, the policy remains the same, that only members who are recognized or seeking recognition should unmute their microphone. This is out of courtesy to all members on the committee and so that background noise does not interfere with another member who is recognized to speak. When you are recognized, whether in the hearing room or on the remote platform, you will need to unmute your microphone and pause for 2 to 3 seconds before speaking so that your words are captured on the live stream. Without objection, members will be recognized in order of committee seniority for questioning witnesses today. This will make it easier for me to ensure all members participating have an opportunity to be recognized. Now that we have all of that out of the way, thank you for your patience. I want to welcome everyone to today's Economic Opportunity Subcommittee hearing, where we're discussing implementation of the education provisions included in my legislation, the Johnny Isakson and David Roe Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act. This landmark legislation was the product of years of hearings with students, VSOs, and the VA, and provided long overdue protections for our student veterans. Isakson-Roe included over 30 sections providing important protections for students in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, making sweeping changes and expansions to veteran education benefits and mandating additional oversight of educational institutions to ensure student veterans are receiving a high-quality education. With regard to COVID-19, it allowed students using their GI Bill or VRNE benefits to continue receiving their monthly housing allowance for a period of time if their school's operation status was negatively impacted by the pandemic. It ensured that students are not charged against their entitlement for courses they were unable to complete due to covered COVID-related reasons. It also extended the benefit expiration date for students whose studies were affected by a temporary or permanent school closure due to COVID-19. Likewise, the bill extended these protections to veterans participating in an apprenticeship or an on-the-job training program. Looking beyond the pandemic, Isakson-Roe made important permanent expansions and updates to veteran education benefits. It expanded eligibility for the Fry and Edith North Rogers STEM scholarship programs. The Fry Scholarship is now available to spouses and children of National Guard and Reserve members who died of service-connected causes, but whose deaths did not occur on active duty. And now healthcare professionals completing clinical training to become licensed to practice can use the Edith North Nurse Rogers STEM Scholarship to help cover the costs of that training. The Veterans Employment Through Technology Education Courses Program, or VETTech, received additional annual funding in Isakson-Roe to serve the growing population of veterans seeking careers in the high-tech sector. So many of those in my district, and I'm excited about that. The law also broadened where and how veterans can use the Yellow Ribbon Program and VA Work Study. Many of us on this committee are excited to host student veterans through the VA Work Study expansion that deemed congressional offices as qualified work sites. To protect students, Isakson-Roe mandated heightened oversight and significant changes as to how VA and schools administer veteran education benefits, marking a new era for quality education for our student veterans. To increase oversight of educational institutions, Isakson-Roe requires state approving agencies to conduct a risk-based survey on institutions that are scrutinized by the Department of Education. It also codified Executive Order 13607, establishing principles of excellence for educational institutions serving service members, veterans, and their family members. Among other things, these principles of excellence forbid institutions from misrepresenting themselves in advertising and promotional material and from engaging in misleading and aggressive recruitment tactics. They also require that schools provide information to prospective students requiring costs associated with the program, as well as requirements for graduation or additional training needed for licensure. This fall, student veterans will know more than ever about how far they can go with their benefits and how to choose a program of education that works for them. Today, we're going to hear directly from VA on their progress implementing these and other transformational provisions. VA will also have the opportunity to comment on any hurdles they're experiencing in executing Isakson-Roe. We have a lot to cover today. We're very proud of this bipartisan legislation, so I'll conclude my comments there, and I'll recognize my friend Ranking Member Moore for any opening remarks he may wish to make. And Ranking Member Moore, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to be here with you today, especially now that we are finally back in-person hearings. I know that it benefits us all to have face-to-face interactions for our hearings. Last Congress, President Trump signed into law the Johnny Isakson and David P. Roe, MD Veterans Health Care and Benefits Improvement Act of 2020. This law made vast improvements to the changes to the administration of health care and the benefits of our nation's veterans. Today's hearing will hopefully provide an update as to the VA's progress in implementing the education provisions included in the landmark legislation. These changes include eligibility expansion for the Edith Norris Rogers STEM Scholarship Program, eligibility expansion for the Fry Scholarship to children of certain deceased members of the armed forces, sunsetting the Montgomery GI Bill beginning in 2030 to allow service members to take advantage of the much more generous post-9/11 GI Bill, authorizing the Yellow Ribbon Program for international schools, allowing eligible service members to transfer their post-9/11 GI Bill to foster children, increase the VA and state approving agency oversight to help prevent bad schools from defrauding student veterans their GI Bill entitlement, and finally eliminating the 12-year expiration date for disabled veterans to receive counseling, training, and benefits under the Veteran Readiness and Employment Program. These changes are just a fraction of what this law will do to improve the lives of our nation's veterans and their dependents. But as we all know, the devil's in the details. Congress work doesn't end with just the final stroke of the President's pen. We must ensure that the VA is following the intent of the law. Today, I hope to hear from our witnesses about the progress that the VA has made in implementing these changes, but also ways that Congress can help address the outstanding issues. VA leadership have approached the subcommittee about several technical corrections they believe are needed in order to successfully implement the law. I look forward to working with Chairman Levin and the rest of the members on the subcommittee on these corrections to ensure that the changes made to the law meet their maximum potential. I want to thank Ms. Bogue for being here today and testifying on behalf of the VBA's Educational Service and providing the subcommittee an update on implementation of these changes. I know that your expertise on these issues has proven to be invaluable to the ranking members and to the chairman on this subcommittee in the past. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the ranking member. I agree. It's nice to see you in person. Nice to see our respective staff here in person as well, and hopefully much more to come. So for our first and only panel today, but it's a good one, we're going to hear from the Veterans Benefits Administration, and we're joined today by Charmaine Bogue, Executive Director of Education Services for the Veterans Benefits Administration. Welcome back, Ms. Bogue. Great to have you back in this room. Thank you for being here, and I'd now like to recognize you for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Levin and Ranking Member Moore and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the status of VA's implementation of the education provisions in the Johnny Isakson and David P. Roe Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act of 2020, signed into law earlier this year. For 77 years, the GI Bill has provided service members, veterans, and their families with opportunities to enrich their lives, enhance their employment opportunities, and expand their economic horizons by providing more than $400 billion in education benefits paid to over 25 million GI Bill students. The provisions in Isakson-Roe greatly aid VA in providing benefits more efficiently and effectively and are directly aligned with VA's transformational goals to provide the highest standards of world-class customer service, improve oversight and accountability, expand opportunities for GI Bill students. Today, our GI Bill student population consists of more than 30% women veterans and 32% family members, either the child or the spouse. Over the past couple of years, we have seen a shift in the people we serve, type of programs available, and modality of programs for GI Bill students. Isakson-Roe includes 32 provisions related to the GI Bill program. VA has taken significant steps to implement the education-related provisions in a timely and efficient manner. Immediately after the law was enacted, VA's Education Service stood up an implementation team consisting of members of senior leadership, 8 dedicated workstream leads, and nearly 50 subject matter experts from our education field offices. The implementation team outlined critical milestones focusing efforts on the provisions that became effective on date of enactment. VA has successfully implemented 15 of the 32 education-related provisions and is on track to implement 27 of the 32 provisions by August 1st, 2021. The 5 remaining provisions have future effective dates beyond August 1st, 2021. To date, VA has successfully implemented provisions related to the expansion of eligibility under Vet Tech, STEM, Frye Scholarship programs, expansion transferring entitlement for certain dependents, and multiple provisions that provide assistance to GI Bill students impacted by COVID. VA is on track to implement the provisions that are effective on or after August 1st and has already fully implemented the provision which requires law schools to be accredited by a specialized accrediting agency to be approved for the GI Bill. We have already begun issuing Frye Scholarship certificates of eligibility to individuals who gained eligibility, amended the work-study program to implement, to which expands qualifying work-study activities to include outreach services provided through congressional offices. Earlier this month, we conducted a virtual training session with interested congressional offices. Section 1010 requires students to electronically verify with VA their continued enrollment in school. VA's initial implementation strategy for this section consists of a phased approach that will allow students to adjust to this new process. Phase 1 will be in place by August 1st, 2021, and will be limited to students enrolled in non-college degree programs. Phase 2 will include students enrolled in college degree programs and will be available by the end of calendar year 2021. Section 1010 also requires dual enrollment certification from schools to accurately track course load and associated tuition and fees to avoid overpayments, saving millions of federal dollars each year. VA has also begun communicating the requirements of 2 critical provisions, 1015 and 1018, to schools and state approving agencies. These sections require accredited institutions to be eligible to participate in federal student aid program through Title IV of the Higher Education Act in order to be eligible to receive GI Bill funds, and essentially codifies the requirements of the Principles of Excellence. Any school that's not compliant with these requirements must require a waiver. I want to thank our federal partners at Department of Education and the National Association of State Approving Agencies for staying committed to work with us to implement these critical provisions. VA has already released guidance on the waiver process, and we've already seen a waiver request come in from schools. VA conducted an outreach campaign using email, social media, and partnerships with other stakeholders to directly communicate with students and school officials about the change in law. VA created the Isakson-Roe webpage, which provides extensive information and includes a breakdown of each provision, frequently asked questions, and an option for students to sign up for GovDelivery, which is a subscription that allows VA to push out notification about the impacts of the changes in the law. VA provided messaging to over 870,000 GI Bill students and to over 50,000 school certifying officials, informing them of the new legislation. Thank you, Chairman Levin and Ranking Member Moore, for the opportunity to provide an update on VA's effort to implement this important legislation. This concludes my testimony. I look forward to answering any of your questions you or the members have regarding the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bogue. With that, I recognize myself for 5 minutes to begin the question portion of the hearing. And I can tell you that Isakson-Roe is personal to me and so many of us, really making sure that we get this right. We worked very hard, as you know, putting so many different pieces of legislation together in one package and passing it at the end of the last Congress. And I think we're all very grateful to you and your team for your hard work. I wanted to ask about a couple sections specifically. One, dealing with the principles of excellence. I know that's been a question. Section 1018 requires schools to comply with principles of excellence, such as disclosing certain information to prospective students related to cost of education and requirements for graduation, and ensuring service members won't be penalized for being activated for duty. Much of it was simply codifying existing standards for schools accepting GI Bill benefits. Our law made some improvements, which require schools to provide students with additional information. And as you know, this law went through an extensive legislative process and was just signed this past January. Considering that schools continue to ask for more guidance to meet the August 1st implementation date, which is 12 days away, how is VA working with schools to achieve that?
That's a great question. So I will tell you, as it relates to that particular section, as well as 1015, which also has a waiver criteria associated with it, we've been conducting office hours since the legislation actually passed. Office hours are basically training sessions for school certifying officials. And since we put out the actual waiver information guidance in the last couple of weeks, today and tomorrow we actually have a couple of additional sessions just to go over that process and answer any questions. We also have a dedicated team in the field that's responsible for any inquiries that come in about the waiver process. And thus far, we received a couple of hundred waiver requests, and we are going through that process right now. So we do have available resources, whether it be our field individuals or training that's going to happen between today and tomorrow for any of the schools to come in and ask questions about the process. But we did try to streamline it as much as possible to make sure it was easy for individuals to apply for that waiver.
And so I gather that you can commit to giving high-performing schools ample opportunities to get their disclosures in place?
That is correct. So we've actually, in our guidance, we've stated that as long as your waiver is pending with VA by August 1st, then we will work with you. We will not, we've also worked with the state approving agencies to ensure that there's not an automatic disapproval of a program on August 1st. The SAAs, state approving agencies, have committed to that, and we plan to work with schools over the next couple of months to make sure we get this right.
Got it. I appreciate that very much. It's hard to believe August 1st is only 12 days away. Also effective August 1st, Section 1016 requires that law schools be accredited by a specialized accrediting agency to receive GI Bill funds. The provision underwent 2 years of congressional hearings and analysis and has been unanimously supported by the nation's largest veteran and military service organizations. It'll help student veterans to be protected against schools that don't provide a quality legal education or adequate preparation for state bar exams. Could you speak to the need for this provision and its importance in protecting student veterans and their earned benefits?
As it relates to that provision, it's important so students understand that it is recognized by an accredited body that's recognized by any state so they could practice law. We thought it was critical, even though the provision goes into effect on August 1st, to execute that provision actually before and put out guidance to all state approving agencies as well as the schools to make sure they understand that criteria. Obviously, to sit for the bar, it's very important that you are recognized by an accredited body. So we thought it was critical to make sure that that information was disseminated across the various stakeholders to include student veterans. Students look towards us to basically say whether a school is the right path for them in terms of whatever program they're trying to achieve.
Let me turn to Section 1010, which requires monthly verification of student enrollment to prevent overpayment of benefits. As you know, a 2015 GAO report found that VA identified $416 million in overpayments under educational assistance programs during fiscal year 2014. These overpayments created burdensome and unexpected debt for approximately 1 in 4 veteran beneficiaries. The intent of Section 1010 is to protect student veterans from being on the hook for this debt, but guidance has not been widely released for students on how to complete the newly required verifications. Can you please describe VA's plan for informing students of this change and educating them on how to verify their enrollment status?
For Section 1010, there's actually 2 components to that. One is dual certification, which will also help with the overpayments. This is where a school is required to basically submit an enrollment document to VA during the time of the student enrolling into the program, and then after the drop-add period, they're required to right away notify us of any changes, so that way we can eliminate or reduce the number of overpayments associated with the tuition and fees. The second part of 1010 is associated with the actual monthly verification. I will tell you it says monthly verification for post 9/11 GI Bill, so we actually do some monthly verification for our other programs. So what we decided was to take a phased approach, because we understand the post 9/11 GI Bill population is significantly larger than the other programs such as Montgomery. 80% of the students that attend school are utilizing their post 9/11 GI Bill benefits. So under our phased approach, we decided to start with non-college degree programs first. We have been basically putting out messaging directly to non-college students to inform them that this functionality is coming on August 1st, and that they will need to make sure that they have an updated phone number with our office in order for us to send a text messaging feature. If a student decides to opt out, they will have an alternative to either contact our call center, our education call center in the Muskogee office, or they can send an email to us as well to notify us that they're still enrolled in school. I will tell you that we've done direct email campaigns to about 38,000 students. On top of that, we've communicated with the school certifying officials. We call them the front line, because they interact with students on a regular basis. So we've put out communication toolkits to all schools to say, this impacts non-college degree programs. Please make sure that you connect with your students, that they're informed about this particular change. Once the process starts on August 1st for the text messaging features, we will send out reminders to students who we have not received a text message alert saying they've been enrolled in the program. Also, we've created basically a report to get down to individualized data to be able to identify those individuals who have not texted us that they are still enrolled in the program. And also, last thing, just keep in mind for this one, it's 2 consecutive months for them to be enrolled, not have received a text message, and then within the 3rd month that the housing allowance would actually stop. So we're hoping within the first 2 months we'll be able to reminders, connect with the school, to be able to connect with that student to make sure that they understand this new process. And then phase 2 will occur later this year in December, where we'll reach out to IHLs, institutions of higher learning, for those students.
Thank you. I know I'm over time, but it was important to hear that from you, and I agree with what the ranking member said. You know, the work doesn't stop when the President signs the legislation. Really begins for you, and I'm very grateful to you and your team, and also to our teams as well, for communicating and just having that open line of communication, particularly as we needed some technical corrections. We got the Deliver Act done, and you let us know how else we can be helpful on our side, and we'll let you know what we're hearing from our veterans out there who are trying to use these new programs in a meaningful way. So we're very grateful, and with that, I'll recognize the ranking member for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Bogue. Could you please share with us the current statistics on the Vet Tech pilot program?
Mm-hmm. So for the Vet Tech pilot program, since it's launched, we've actually issued a certificate of eligibility to over 28,000 individuals who are eligible for the program. To date, because of the funding associated with that, we've been able to have about 3,000 students participate in the program. This year, because of Isakson-Roe, we had an increase in funding from $15 million to $45 million. And as of today, we've basically exhausted $38 million of the $45 million, and we have $7 million left. The program has a really high success rate when it comes to actual graduation of the program. We've seen about 2,100 folks attend the program, and basically in terms of completion of employment, we've had about 1,000 folks who've actually completed employment within 60 days of completing their training program and earning on average about $60,000.
That's a great question. So you tell me you got $7 million left. How long do you think that will last funding-wise?
So we are gearing up to actually send out notification to all our vet tech training providers and students to say we're basically at the tail end of funding with $7 million, low on funding. So it's first come, first serve. So please come in and enroll in school. And usually when we send out that notification, we'll see the money exhaust within about 30 or 60 days.
Okay, and second question, can you give us a brief update on the Digital GI Bill project?
Sure. So Digital GI Bill, earlier this year, we awarded a contract for Digital GI Bill. We're currently in our first year of that effort. The first major milestone actually occurs on August 1st, coincides with a number of the Isakson-Roe provisions, yes. The team has been working towards implementing a number of those provisions that had an IT impact. So we will see a number of those provisions be automated into basically our long-term solution, our IT systems. The other piece is that we'll actually see a small bump up in automation, so about 10 to 15% increase in automation. What does that mean? More enrollments going through the system versus people touching those, so faster times for folks to get their checks, right? To get their monthly housing allowance as well as their tuition and fees paid for. So that's what we'll see in the first Digital GI Bill release coming this August 1st. The next release is coming up just about 60 days afterwards, and we'll provide more information once we finish our planning sessions around that in terms of what's going to be included in that release. But we'll see more increased automation, more self-service options in the next release. But there will actually be 3 releases before the end of this calendar year.
Okay, and a follow-up to that, has all the funding from the CARES Act that was transferred for this project been used? And why did the department request an additional $81 million for FY22 beyond the CARES Act's funding?
So the funding in the CARES Act basically carries us for the first 2 years. The first year, the base year of the contract actually started this March and ends in September. The next wave of the CARES Act funds will be for next FY fiscal year. And then the reason why we asked for the additional 80+ million is because of the way the contract is structured. The performance period ends right before FY23. So we needed to make sure that we didn't have any gaps in service, so that way the money is available at the tail end of 22 to be able to fully fund 23. So it's just carrying the money basically forward to pay for that FY23 year.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bogan. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank the ranking member. I was similarly taken back to hear there's only $7 million left, and our excellent staff informed me that back on May 18th, so if anybody over in the Senate is listening to this, we sent them legislation to have another $155 million for this program, and it's sitting over in the Senate. Anybody, SVAC staff or anybody listening in, we'd love for you to fund Mr. Gallegos, to pass Mr. Gallegos' bill with $155 million. With that, I will recognize my good friend from New Hampshire, Mr. Pappas, and Chris, we can see you on the screens here, so take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Levin and Ranking Member Moore, for holding this hearing today. And Ms. Bogue, I appreciate your testimony and all the efforts you have ongoing. That's a lot of balls up in the air at one time, so we're really grateful for your time here today. And, you know, as we have this conversation, I think we all agree that we owe it to the veterans of this country to make sure that we're doing all we can to protect their benefits and establish better accountability and oversight measures. And that's why the Isakson-Roe legislation was so important. And the implementation of that bipartisan bill is really going to be a big change in a positive direction for veterans of this country, assuming we can get this right. So I'm wondering if we can zero in on the issue of state approving agencies. They're required to perform risk-based surveys on institutions that are under the Department of Education scrutiny. And I'm wondering, Ms. Bogue, if you can explain how VA is designing the risk-based survey and how quality of education and financial solvency of the school is weighed in this risk-based survey.
So as it relates to risk-based surveys, I will tell you this is something we've actually been working on for quite some time, number of years to basically get it right on risk-based surveys, which will supplement what we call compliance surveys. Compliance surveys usually is a checks and balance that schools are following the laws and regulations within Title 38 as it relates to the GI Bill program and oversight, ensuring checks and balances on overpayments, and making sure that they're certifying students correctly. And risk-based surveys really gets at factors beyond that to really hone in on issues outside of those parameters where we could see that maybe there's some concerns or issues as it relates to program approval for the particular school. So we've had a strong partnership with state approving agencies to work through the details of the risk-based surveys. We've had a work group going for about a year and a half now to work through the details. Also, NASA and the National Association for State Approving Agencies also has a pilot happening right now to actually test out the risk-based survey model with certain schools that have agreed to be part of that pilot. We've seen some initial results, and right now we're working through the details to finalize that process. And on top of that, we've also come to the agreement in what is called the Cooperative Agreement. It's basically an agreement between VA and SAA to perform the program approval activities to make sure there's strong language in there about the process that SAAs need to follow when conducting those risk-based surveys.
Okay, and on the specific issues of concerns around the quality of an education and the financial solvency of a school, those are going to be factored into the survey?
That is correct.
Well, thanks for that. So it's critical, obviously, to establish the oversight and accountability measures before a veteran enrolls. But unfortunately, for many veterans, this help comes a little bit too late, because I've heard from countless vets in my district who utilize their benefits to enroll in an educational institution only to have its doors closed under suspicious circumstances. More often than not, the veterans leave having exhausted their benefits and without obtaining a degree. So Section 1007 of Isakson-Roe provides for the restoration of benefits from the school closures for veterans participating in DR&E, the same way it is for the post 9/11 GI Bill beneficiaries. But recouping the lost funds is an extremely cumbersome and expensive process, and typically only occurs on a case-by-case, school-by-school basis. Can you explain what roadblocks might exist that stand in the way of making this process more efficient and effective for the VA and for our veterans? And what authority and resources does VA need to restore and recoup benefits faster?
I will tell you, with restoration entitlement as a whole, we actually do proactive outreach to students once we learn of a school closure or other factors that are influencing that school where they're entitled to restoration entitlement. But I do want to take a step back to talk about, understand that issues do occur after a school is approved. But there is the gatekeepers, who I call the state approving agencies. They're the gatekeepers of program approvals. They should be checking these schools on the front end to make sure that the schools are compliant with the program criteria. They should be checking financial stability. There's a host of factors that they're checking on the front end. But sometimes circumstances do change. And as soon as we are notified of those changes, whether it be a Department of Ed has issues or concerns, whether it be students submitting complaints to our feedback system, and we notice a trend, whether it be Federal Trade Commission or OIG or any other entity, we try to take swift action. And once we realize there's some impact to students, we notify the students of that impact immediately. In terms of what can we do more, we'd be happy to sit down to talk to you about some of the other areas when it comes to restoration of entitlement that should be considered to help students out if things like these, if issues like these arise, and we need to be able to help students to basically be able to transfer to another school.
Well, thanks. I'm over my time, but we'd appreciate the opportunity to continue that conversation. Thanks again for all your work.
Thank you.
Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. I'd now like to recognize Representative Cawthorn, if he is on the Zoom. Representative Cawthorn, are you there?
I sure am, Chairman. Thank you very much for having me. Mrs. Bogue, thank you very much for being here. I have a very quick question. Could you please provide us an update on the implementation of the Veterans Rapid Training Assistance Program, also known as VRAP?
Absolutely. So the Veterans Rapid Training Assistance Program was passed in the American Rescue Plan earlier this year in March. And basically within 60 days, we were able to fully launch that program to include getting training providers online, or when I say online, getting connected and approved to be able to offer assistance under that particular program, in addition to working with Department of Labor to identify the high demand occupation list, as well as getting the student application up and running. And I will say to date, we've already received over 6,500 applications for the VRAP program, and we've approved over 4,600 of those applications. So that's a pretty high success rate in terms of applications receiving certificates of eligibility. I will tell you the number one reason why we deny an individual for the program is actually because they have eligibility left under post 9/11 GI Bill or VRNE. So it actually is kind of a good news story to know that they can utilize education benefits elsewhere. To date, we've seen about 600 training providers come in the door. We continue to do aggressive outreach with training providers to get more in the door to provide assistance. Those programs consist of non-college degree programs, community colleges across the board. As it relates to the students, we basically have already had about 30 students complete their program. And you think about when that legislation passed, they've completed their program and they're already in the phase of looking for employment. So that's exciting that soon we will see individuals actually employed by this training program. And then lastly, I'll just mention some of the top trainings that we're seeing from our students is basically IT-related fields, and then the medical field are some of the top areas that we're seeing students gravitate towards for the training programs.
Excellent. Well, ma'am, thank you very much for your time. Mr. Chairman, with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Cawthorn. There are no further members for a first round of questions. I do have an additional one. The bill obviously has empowered SAAs quite a bit, and so the question is whether they have the resources they need to do everything that Isakson-Roe requires of them, and if not, whether VA has the ability to provide resources if those are needed to SAAs.
When it comes to state approving agencies, they actually receive a certain allocation set in statute every single year. There's actually a COLA associated with that. It's over $25 million in terms of the funding that's received. I will tell you, since basically Comeri passed and that funding increase happened as well as the COLA, we have been able to allocate all funding to the state approving agencies based off of our allocation model. And the allocation model basically includes program approvals that happens in that respective state's number of institutions. That's all factored into the allocation model to determine how much money each state should receive. We send out a letter to those in each state to tell them their funding. If they have any questions or concerns about the methodology, they can reach out to us. In addition, we have honored every single supplemental request when an SAA comes in and asks for additional money. And to date, we have not exhausted the foundational amount of $25 million. There's also $3 million that VA can carry over in GOE funding, and we just have not needed to tap into that additional set of funds in order to help out the SAAs. So we encourage SAAs to come directly to us if they have any concerns or questions. If they need funds, just submit that request and we'll honor it. In addition, just last month, we actually held a training session with the state approving agencies to go over the allocation model and the methodology behind it and to answer any questions that they had regarding the particular model.
Thank you. Another question for you is Isakson-Roe made overpayments the responsibility of schools, but some schools are reporting that VA is actually collecting the debts, and I'm curious if there is a conflict there, and if so, how we can address it.
Mm-hmm. So for Section 1010, as it relates to overpayments for schools now to be responsible for a certain aspect of the student's debt, went into effect. And when it went into effect, basically any debt created on the effective date of that piece of legislation is now the responsibility of the school. We did send out letters to all the schools and provided training to schools about that particular matter. At any point that a school disagrees with the debts that have been allocated under their particular institution, they can actually file a dispute with our debt management center, or they can reach out to their local education liaison representative, and we will audit that information to show them exactly who the debt is associated with, how it originated, the terms it's associated with, to make sure that they understand that process. But again, for 1019, it's any debt that was established after the effective date that we're charging for the particular institution.
Thank you, and I guess just to wrap up as a broad question, is there any other piece of Isakson-Roe that, as you look at implementing the bill, gives you concern or pause, or you think will be particularly difficult in the months ahead?
I wouldn't necessarily say concern or pause, but what I would say is that there are ones that definitely we need to pay a little bit more attention to than others. We talked about many of those as it relates to 1018 and 1015 when it comes to the additional criteria that we're now imposing on schools. We want to make sure that they fully understand that. We want to make sure we take our time with those schools to understand those new rules, and we want to make sure that we're not just quickly disapproving programs, which will obviously have an impact on students. And then the other piece is Section 1010 as it relates to the monthly verification, to make sure that we have the latest and greatest mobile information for our students and that they understand that process and how it's important for them to reach out to VA to notify us of those issues. So those are really the ones where we're focused on. And then for future, the ones that go in effect in future, I will say sunsetting of Montgomery. That will be a lot of coordination that will need to happen across federal agencies as well as schools to make sure students understand exactly that process and how that will play out when we sunset Montgomery. But at the end of the day, it's goodness because now they'll be able to use post-9/11 GI Bill.
Thank you so much. Again, let's just keep over-communicating, and I really appreciate all your good work. And with that, I'll yield to the ranking member, who I think has a couple more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bogue, in-state tuition obviously is important. Can you please tell me how many states have implemented the in-state tuition requirements that now allow students and veterans using the GI Bill to be eligible for that in-state tuition regardless of when they were discharged?
I'll do you one better. I'll tell you that there's only 5 states that have not implemented the in-state tuition. Those 5 states, it's not because they're not trying. They have to work through their state legislature in order to implement those changes. And we are working very closely with the state approving agencies on that. And most of them will come into compliance by August 1st. For those that don't, then we will deal with those schools through the waiver process. But everyone has been very collaborative to make sure that we understand exactly the milestones those remaining 5 states need in order to cross the finish line on the in-state tuition piece.
So we've got 12 days in 5 states. What 5 states are we talking about? Do you know, Ms. Bogue?
I can get you that information.
Okay, yeah, that'd be
Let's
great.
see if I can quickly pull it up. If you have another question while I'm looking for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, well, I hate this totally different question. But
Oh, okay, here it is.
You go
I
ahead.
I
You
did
got
find
it? Okay,
I
go
got it. Arizona, Connecticut, Michigan, Nebraska, and Oregon.
So no SEC schools in except Arizona. I'm just kidding.
That is
I'm just kidding. Okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, so one more question, and then this will be it for me, Mr. Chairman. Can you please tell me how the VA approves the international schools for the GI Bill programs?
For the foreign institutions, we actually have a dedicated team within VA that approves the international schools. It's not the state approving agency, it's actually VA that approves those foreign locations. And basically, right now, what we're dealing with the foreign institutions is the Yellow Ribbon Program. Now that they're eligible for the Yellow Ribbon Program, so we've actually opened up the application for them to come in and apply. They have until the end of this month actually to submit their application so they can get in time for the next academic year. And to date, we've only had one school come in from Spain to apply for that program. But we continue to push messaging to say that this is now available, the Yellow Ribbon Program for foreign institutions.
Okay, thank you. You answered my second follow-up to that with the one school. And let me make a correction, Mr. Levin. It's actually Arizona is not in the SEC. It's Arkansas. So we got 0 SEC schools that have not complied.
My wife is a proud Arizona Wildcat, good Pac-12 school. Staff actually brought one additional question to my attention, which I'll go ahead and ask. Regarding the Rogers STEM Scholarship program, we've heard that schools are reporting a glitch in the approval process where VA may not be using the most accurate or complete data from the Department of Education for approval of STEM-related programs of study. Curious if you've heard anything. If not, we can circle back and discuss.
I have not heard anything directly about this particular issue, so if there's a particular school that's come up on the net, be happy to look into it further. But what I will say is Department of Education has their list, and our Buffalo team does follow that list by Department of Education. We have identified over the last couple of years a couple of programs that are just not on that list explicitly. And actually in the statute, it says the secretary has the authority to add programs to the list. So after we conduct some research on that particular program to make sure it's really STEM related, we will add it to the list. So we'll be glad to take that information back about that particular school or schools that are having a problem and look into it further.
Terrific, thank you. And I understand that my friend from Maryland, Mr. Trone, Representative Trone, has joined. Are you there? We're trying to promote you, David. David, are you there? There you are.
Okay, there we go.
The floor is yours, Representative Trone.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bogue, in regards to Section 1018, educational institutions have the responsibility of providing a point of contact for student veteran counseling. Does this counseling cover mental health counseling, or is it just limited to educational needs?
It could be any resources within the VA space or on the campus location. So it's not restricted to just education. It's just like if someone called our call center, yes, their focus is education, but we should be able to direct them to any other aspects of the organization to assist them with wherever the problem is.
So mental health counseling, they're suffering depression, anxiety, along those lines. Certainly, our vets certainly get more than their fair share of it. This will address that directly.
Yes, everyone receives specialized training on mental health services and how to identify particular issues and make sure that we direct folks to the right place to get the right resources they need to take care of any mental health issues that they have.
And how do we get the word out, publicize the fact that this help is there, because the stigma, we have around mental health is so prevalent that many folks, particularly vets who come out of a culture that, that's considered perhaps, weakness, which is not true, of course. How do we get the word out for them to see it and feel safe to do so?
So we can work with our VHA partners to make sure to provide members information or a communication toolkit as it relates to mental health resources available. So I think that'd be a good partnership to have to provide those toolkits to get the word out. In addition, there's also the VA website. We have information on there. Even on our dedicated GI Bill page, we have information on there. And like I said, the majority of our VA professionals or employees are trained to identify these kind of issues and be able to direct folks in the right manner.
Okay, well, that's great. I think it's really important we keep the focus on the mental health issue. We know what veteran suicides have been for a long time, and the challenges vets face with PTSD and what everybody's faced now with COVID and the economic collapse. Mental health challenges are at an all-time high. Speaking of mental health counseling, do you know how many student veterans actually move into behavioral health professionals, become behavioral health professionals, i.e. move into that field? And can a GI Bill beneficiary pursue a career as a behavioral health professional?
We actually have over 400,000 VA approved programs, so there's a lot of options. And I will tell you, the medical field in general is one of our top 10 in terms of the medical profession. For medical professions across the board. As it relates to behavioral specialists, I would actually have to go back to take a look at the data to see that exact field and how many of our GI Bill students are entering into that particular field. But as I stated before, the medical profession is one of our top 10 training programs that we see our student veterans gravitating towards.
That would be wonderful. If you could go ahead and look back at one of your staff and find what those numbers have been perhaps the last 4 or 5 years in a row, so we can see what the direction is in that area. Because, we really believe with what's happening in behavioral health, we have an acute shortage of professionals all over the country. We're currently conducting a GAO study to get a handle on that, on the needs and the pipeline of professionals in that entire area. So if you could share that, I don't think there's anybody better qualified than our vets to move into this area to help other vets. So I think that's an important area that we can really be of service vet to vet. So I would appreciate you get that back to us.
Understood.
Yep. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield back and thank you very much for your testimony, ma'am.
Thank you.
I thank my friend from Maryland. I thank you for your continued advocacy for mental health, incredibly important. If there are no further questions, we can begin to bring this hearing to a close. I think we're all very proud of this bipartisan legislation. We're very thankful to you, Ms. Bogue, for coming to speak with us again and for all your good work and your team's good work in implementing the trickier provisions of the bill, of the law. But I think it's an example that we can get big things done on a bipartisan basis for our veterans, and that's exactly what we're going to continue to do in this subcommittee. Ranking Member, any closing thoughts, comments?
No, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Bogue. I appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
And I thank our teams for their continued collaboration, and really, really nice to be in the same room with you all today. With that, all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include additional materials. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.